extracts from the Tales of Rumbucket Lane. Each one will have a short introduction to it, just to explain basically what it's about and where it's going. So we'll start with Mr. Peploe. He's in debt, he can't pay his bills. He's tried writing letters with the instructions from a book called The Art of Writing Letters, which was written in 1770, and clearly it's not worked for him. We join him when he's sitting there just looking at a bare wall. The wall has no answers, nothing but a landscape of lime-washed grit. Not even the plastering was done well. This is not a grand place, not a residence of royalty, not a seat of government. However, it might be expected, at least reasonable to expect, that this might have some care in construction. Tufts of hair bleached by lime poked from the wall. It was quite simply never finished. That seems to be the truth of the matter. A case of indifference to those who might dwell within. Maybe an invitation to fin it yourself, dear tenants. The wall takes the mind on a journey across its plains intersected with shallow wealds, ridges that lead to hills, and down into gorges that run dry of inspiration. No way to add water to the infertile mind of a man trapped by debt. There is nothing to wash away the dust that tells only of a never-ending clash with humanity and chimney soot, thatch dust and dirt. The dirt that numerous mouths tread in, mouths with feet, screaming like hungry martlets, martlets with feet, an abomination of nature, always hungry. Turn and tears. They leak and roll down dry cheeks, finally trapped in stubble that grows unchecked. No caring hand to help, no pennies to pay for assistance. So just look at the wall that carries no advice, and wait for night to come and day to follow. There is enough water in the jar to last another day if only sips are taken. There's no need to wander out into the judgmental sun and be gazed upon by God and his minions. To make decent requires water. Water is better to drink than to wash. It can last more than a day if it's sipped, slow sips, sips that are just there to push the end a little further away. There on the wall, a spider dangles, its legs spread wide as if to show off like a circus acrobat. It spins a little each way, left and right. It has no motive to hang there and dangle, other than just to stretch out and spin. A hand moves to swat the nuisance away. Why would a spider have an answer? They only talk to kings, and no king sits here in this chamber. The spider notices the hand, legs reorganize and find the thread. It's gone in a moment into a hole never seen before. Paradise, a hole to hide in, a hole not discovered, and to keep it that way. Do not show off your freedom, do not stretch, just cower, and they won't find you. The wall did have an answer after all. Maybe spiders don't just speak to kings. Maybe there is a hole to hide in. A sip of water. The warmth of old water in the mouth is less pleasant when the mind has woken. The water is now to be used for grooming. There's a freshness from each stroke of a razor, a moment when the blade is handled with the intention of life. It takes away the old and prepares the way for clarity. However, a moment still hangs on the edge of the blade, just a fleeting thought, the other freedom. The one the spider did not mention. One strong stroke of a blade that first grips the flesh, opens it and slides along deeply and peacefully with a sting that fades, frustrated tingles in the hand and sleep. But not this time. There might be another option. So that was inspired by a series of letters which are actually in that very book, which I dug out from somewhere or the other, which instructs how to write letters of debt. Rumbucket Lane's a long road, developed over time, sits outside Canterbury, just without the walls. It's a funny place. It's full of interesting houses. If you imagine the rookeries of London, That's what it's kind of based on. There's rich and poor that live together. And we join another character who lives further up the lane, and how her father has told a story over and over again, how they always do within families, how the family fled and how they were hunted and how they were driven from one town to the next, how cousin Elizabeth was such a disgrace and how she met her end. Pissing while she cannot whistle, grandfather said. The story tells of escape and heroics. To an uninitiated ear, a first-timer to the tale, it will seem that there was a heroic exodus. This family as one forging across the plains of America, fighting Union soldiers, avoiding natives, driven out of Rupert's Land onto a ship under assumed names to England, where sympathetic hosts took us to safety. How fortune was regained with clever friends and dubious allies. And after all this, poor Elizabeth met an end in Maidstone prison at the length of Chatham's finest rope. That thing is cursed, grandfather would say. He said that about every item saved from that journey. He picked a different thing every storytelling. The sword, the gun, the axe, the knife, all cursed and filled with the spirits of the dead that each one had dragged the soul from. It is true, at least as far as knowable, each has taken a life. Blood still stains wooden fittings, and scars still, and the person who wields them will gain either one of the following: self-murder, vengeance from society, fortune, and great luck. I am of the opinion all items must be about the person to bring fortune. Take one from its siblings and doom follows. Take a pair and trouble pursues, etc. I dare not separate the family of things, not least due to my own superstition. It is true, no doubt, that stories told happened. Like all tales, they brew and ferment into far more exciting products than just water and barley. They started as the family was dispersed for years, all heading to the same place. And only once whole again, with all those things, did fortune follow. I gazed towards the axe. I always did. It was small-headed, with a heart cut into the blade, all set about a long handle. They called it a tomahawk, a striker. On the blade's back, a spike much like a raven's beak. The story goes it belonged to a native of the Americas called Upahska, from a tribe I can hardly remember the heritage, but all the name Hunkpapa. As my family crossed the plains, myself in my mother's arms, they met up with this Hupaskar. He was noble by all accounts, stronger than most men, more a person made from the land by unknown hands. I must confess my family's recollection of pronunciations and spellings of these words is likely incorrect. However, I am sure the sounds are similar, as my father was taught by this native, as he puts it, with great laughter. I sit and listen to the voices telling the stories. The tomahawk fills my mind. Upahaskar gave it to my father as we had no weapons, so he says. It was pressed into his hands as Union soldiers came closer to us, as if told over and over. Upahaskar gave his life to us. He stood in the way of a Union pistol, gave father a chance to strike hard with the tomahawk, as the native lay dying. He handed over a knife to my mother, set in a beautiful beaded scabbard, apparently to protect me. They speak little more of this moment. I remember little of it myself, but one thing, a smell that sits behind the teeth stays, halfway up the nose, brown and dry. I hear laughter, not for any who sit here telling tales, a laugh that's from far away. And as it finds amusement, Charlotte, Charlotte, my father presses, have you gone into a dream again? He says this to a background of amused laughs. Remember when the dear girl was all but 12, sparks my aunt. That axe thing? Oh, your face, George. I knew what mother would say. My face was in fear. Father, loudly jovial, glanced first to the scarred wall and then to my mother, who watched purse-lipped. I went way back into the safety of thought and dream, into when I was 12 in the parlour of our new house. The tomahawk felt light in the hand to a 12-year-old girl. The long handle will have great swings of the head, leaping from chair to chair, chasing, fleeing soldiers in blue, shouting, "Upahaska, Upahaska!" There was one blue soldier running too fast to catch. The floor became a stream, too slow to cross and too fast to step. "Throw it!" shouted Upahaska, his voice laughing. "Throw it, girl!" The tomahawk left the hand, as if an escaping bird, the beak turning over, pierced tail. It sung, catching the ear of the soldier. A pretty song, a throb whistle like great wings that open as death descends upon a poor creature, too small to realise what comes next. It causes the soldier to freeze. The bird hits hard, white light emits like great wings, and the sound now formed from the impact fills the room. The blue soldier is struck down. "Charlotte!" Mother's voice screams hot and red. The world returns from birchwoods and streams, dancing rocks and open skies to a sun-stroked white plaster ceiling, scattered chairs and rolled up rugs, and a wall, blue and broad, with a tomahawk buried deep in the lath, white dust falling. "Do not dare tell me Upahaska told you to do it." The reason fell silently from the lips of a 12-year-old girl who knew prison awaited, without food and an embarrassing morning to follow. So as you can see, I use artifacts to write. That particular tomahawk is from North America. I actually got a Canadian blacksmith to make it, so it's correct for the sort of type that was around in the 1860s, just around the time of the American Civil War, that would have been used by a Plains Indian of the Huntpapa tribe. The story is also true, although it's true in a sense that actually it was in the First World War and it was my grandfather that was saved by a Gurkha, but, you know, similar things. Next, we join Charlotte, when she's a little older, and she's staying with her aunt and uncle. Their uncle is a vicar, and they live on Rumbucket Lane in the village. They overlook an interesting place, the Brook Hotel, or Inn rather. It has comings and goings from a building that's set slightly behind. And as she ponders her own fate and what's to become of her, she observes this place, taking notes. She is quite nosy and a self-proclaimed detective of sorts. This smells like buns are cooking. They overpower the vicarage with a warm blanket of satisfaction. A rattle of some large object, metal and valuable enough to attract the stern words from a pulpit practiced voice, rolls about the tiles. A sparrow scuffles in the eaves, who might have woken a drowsy mind if it was already awake. This mind is focused on a list, silver pencil ready to write and underline a name. Mr. Brown, his nose buried in the cleavage of an accounts book or the pencil point drops to the page and an underline struck. He is worth close observance. A half-open eye watches. What do you think, dear Mr. Tim? A hand reaches to expectant ears, fingers run about the head and fold and tickle at the bat-like visage that is a very small, well-dressed, in white bib and socks, black jacket and hat, with well-groomed, white-whiskered cat. His throat rattles with satisfaction. His nose snorts and his fur ripples like old worn velvet. You would eat me if I were a mouse, would you not, Mr. Tim? And marry me if you were a gentleman, or take me on campaign if an officer. However, as a cat, you will curse me with scratches and bites and beg for food and then look for hospitality from a warm bed. And all for what, Mr. Tim? My amusement to watch you chase ribbons, a popcorn cat that entertains and makes us giggle like children. It is luck, Mr. Tim, that you are not a rabbit, or I would eat you in a pie, or a boy that I might scold, or a dog that I would leave in the snow. Mr. Tim, you are what they wish me to be, sir. To sit in a chair, play with ribbons and threads, plink on a piano, take affection and sustenance, and Mr. Tim and Sir to scratch and bite, but with affection, not fury. Or be dressed in velvet and fade in the sun. That, Mr. Tim, is our fate, you and I. But, sir, you would not endure children. I think I would not endure such things if I was a man. I would be a flaneur. I would play cards, smoke tobacco, drink rum and brandy in the same glass, and read books about adventure, and from there, with one leg crooked over the arm of the chair, wink at the girls, and with a smile, charm them to my chambers, make idle with them, make merry with them, and Mr. Tim play with their ribbons. Mr. Tim watched the slowly standing figure. Mr. Tim, I shall away for dinner and announce my new path, a flaneur. I will tell my uncle as follows. Dearest uncle, it is with great joy I now ask you to bear witness to the becoming of a nephew. I shall take up cigars, cards, and women, and burden you in a way that will make you quietly proud and publicly ashamed. Sir, I will say, Mr. Tim and I have discussed this, and we shall go out right away to the Brook Inn and state our demands of beer and pie, and, sir, before we are full, pay a visit to the house behind and exhaust our allowance. And I would then beg funds for books and travel to Paris, where I will dance with all the girls and come back married. She will be sweet and shy to you, sir, but to me, sir, she will scratch and bite. Oh, come, Mr. Tim, come along. I'm sure there's beef for you and for myself capon. Dear Mr. Tim, let's depart to discuss marriage, and whatever reprimand I may suffer for whatever I've done wrong today. Come, little thing, come on. The tiny cat, unfurled, tail overly long, stood tall, as long legs stretched a long body to a long yawn, and for Mr. Tim, at least, a long walk to dinner. Thank you.